Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about something that definitely in my opinion will cause a lot of discussion in the comment section. So first, before anything, I want to remind everybody to remain civil there and just express their opinions the best they can. And this is a conversation that actually kind of started yesterday in my yesterday's live stream, and I found myself to get really passionate about this subject in particular. Part of the reason why I am so passionate about this discussion is because I see a lot of terms in MCOC being thrown around much more freely, like I personally agree with them being used. Like most tier lists include 17 different types of god tiers, almost god tiers, kind of god tiers, and definitely god tiers and stuff like that. And in my personal mind, like if somebody's referred to as a god tier, that has to be pretty much almost the peak of kind of like the quality, right? And the discussion is going to be about must-have champions in Model Concept Champions. And in the first part of the video, I'll be talking about what I perceive to be a must-have champion and how it translates in MCOC. And then in second part, we're going to be going over top 5 champions I personally currently perceive as must-haves, and for the reasons of me doing so. Because I really don't think, and here comes the first part, that MCOC has a single one must-have champion. And in my mind, must-have is like an absolute kind of, you need that champion in order to be able to progress. And I don't think we have a single champion in game without whom you would be stuck. We have combinations of champions. We have like tricky fights where it's very small select pool of champions that can get you through, like let's say the 6.22 Mr. Sinister and some other fights. There's very small sample of champions that can do with that fight, but there's never a single champion that is an absolute must-have or you will not progress. Therefore, I think at its core definition, a must-have doesn't exist in MCOC. There are champions that are very great to have. There are champions that will help you a lot more than others, but clearly looking at it, there is not a single champion where if you don't have the champion, let's say Quake, right? Quake, in my opinion, is the best champion in game and closest thing that we can get to must-have. So I spoiled the spot number 1 there. And even if you don't play Quake, even if you don't use Quake, even if you don't have Quake, you can still get every single piece of content in this game done. So I think that kind of proves the point that there is not a single absolute ultimate must-have champion in this game. We do have champions that obviously perform significantly better than others and champions that unlock new piece of content. And I will base my top 5 must-have champion list based on those criteria. Either how often they become useful or how significant their addition to the roster can be, and how significant their impact to your roster can be and is, basically. So I'm just gonna pop in some random quest in Act 4, and I'm not even gonna pop in the quest, I'm just gonna start building the team then. So we're gonna edit the team, and I'm gonna go over the champions that I personally believe to be must-haves and the reasons for doing so. First up, we're gonna start, quite obviously now, with Quake. Now, I do believe Quake to be the best champion in game, and in large part, I do believe she is the best champion in game because she bypasses the largest amount of obstacles. There are hundreds of tricky fights, thousands of fight node combinations, many annoying defenders, and at large, Quake in general just deals with the largest amount of them and does it with the least amount of extra effort exhausted. So the time you pull Quake, the time you learn how to use Quake properly, you make this game a lot easier. And again, just to reiterate, I do not think that this game has a single champion without whom you cannot progress in content A, B, or C, or whatever. But overall, I think Quake is the most helpful tool any summoner can have. And I know there are many people who don't like the playstyle, there are many people who don't want to put in the effort to learn it, and that's why they hate on Quake. But objectively, I don't think there is good argument for saying that Quake is not the best champion in the game. And we're going to carry on with the champion that I think is the only champion in the game that follows closely Quake. And that's Ghost, because Ghost also bypasses a whole plethora of annoying nodes, annoying fight combinations, offers you great counters to many of the problem fights, and Ghost is one of those champions where the better you are at Ghost, the more you can handle it. For instance, an average Ghost player will not be able to use Ghost for 6.22 Sinister, but at the same time, some very proficient people using Quake have been able to clear 6.22 Mr. Sinister. So, where Quake, I think, relatively plateaus in her ability to clear content, and it is still higher than Ghost at the best, I think. Ghost has quite varied margin of how well you can use Ghost, and the better you use Ghost, the more she can tackle and the more she can do. And she has been pretty much a long time one of the most potent champions in the game. And I do think these two champions are the best in the game overall, the most valuable, the most sought after, the ones that offer any account the largest amount of help towards any point in their progression and across multiple game modes and across multiple pieces of content. Now, after this, I actually got a bit stuck, because the criteria here couldn't be anymore what I kind of consider to be next best champions in game, because those video series will come later where I go over the best champions of each class and so on and so forth, because I didn't feel it quite qualified anymore past this point, because these two champions are so far ahead anything and everything else in the game that spot number 3, 4, and 5, whatever, in terms of, let's say, the best champions in the game, didn't quite come close to making them must-haves in my head. So I started looking at it differently. And the way I started looking at it, which are kind of like the most in-demand champions, which are the champions we, as a player base, rely the most, look for the most, wait for the most. And spot number 3 is going to be Aegon. And Aegon is as close as it comes to must-have in MCOC, I believe, because he immediately offers you significant ease of access to content that otherwise would be exponentially more expensive. And again, the same idea here kind of applies, where you don't have to have Aegon in order to explore Abyss. You don't have to have Aegon in order to explore Labyrinth of Legends. But your cost of doing that is likely to go up quite drastically if you do not. And I think that kind of qualifies Aegon to be on this list, where Aegon is looked at as this key holder of a new progression level. It's looked as a key holder for a specific piece of content. And even though he is not one of the most used champions daily, I don't think he's best skill champion, for instance. I do think Nick Fury is a better skill champion, and I definitely use Nick Fury a lot more. I do think Aegon represents more of a must-have scenario, where if you want to carry on and progress and unlock new piece of content. Therefore, I think Aegon is going to come in here and spot number 3 as, let's say, a must-have. And after this, it got even trickier, because no matter how I was thinking about it, everything else in game can be replaced. Absolutely everything else in a game. If you don't have one champion, you use another one. In many situations, for instance, if you need to shut down a robot, if you don't have Medusa, you use Vision Arcus. In other situations, if you need an immune champion, and if you don't have, let's say, the best immune champion, you can just use most other immune champions, right? Same like Caustic Temper, right? You can have Captain Marvel movie, or Corvus, or Medusa, or some other champions who have the qualifying abilities. But I think we're currently already starting to see, and this is a relatively new change in Marvel Concept Champions. I think Magneto does represent a very solid group of problem fights that get solved immediately, and we can see Magneto is already being used in Alliance War, in Abyss, in Act content, and Magneto, when he goes up against metal champions, much more often than not is the best option. Is the best case scenario, and it makes a lot of fights which otherwise would be hard, tricky, expensive, or would need very varied set of counters. He makes them doable by himself. So I think Magneto groups in a large niche or a large portion of the fights in MCOC, and Magneto, I think, is kind of getting on this list because what he does, he's extremely proficient at. You could make an argument that Archangel would fit in somewhere there as well. I could make an argument for Archangel to be 5th champion, but I kind of at the same time felt that they fulfill similar roles, and as a champion individually, I think Magneto is better. And Archangel is gonna get left off this list, but he, I think, also resembles the same qualifiers, close to what Magneto does. And I do perceive Magneto to be one of those champions where every roster should have access to in order to make their life a lot easier. And the last must-have champion, and again, this must-have addition here is not as much directed to Dr. Doom as a single character, but much more to the ability set he represents. And the reason why I am putting Dr. Doom on this list is just because he is quite flat out the best of that ability set that I perceive to be must-have. And I hope that explanation works for you. Basically, it is an absolute must-have to have an ability to deal with power and deal with buffs, because that is quite frequently requested, and that is quite frequently basically mandatory in order to progress in the game. And Dr. Doom represents buff and power control, I think, as good as anybody ever will. In addition to that, Dr. Doom single-handedly has pretty much the largest amount of known uses in high tier, high difficulty level of content. You could replace Dr. Doom with 2 Mystic Champions or something else, but Dr. Doom in itself kind of embodies the values that I believe a player 100% should have access to. Once again, very strong power control and very strong buff control. And again, on top of that, he's an absolute tank. He has a ton of great matchups. He has a ton of great uses. He's one of Alliance War staples. He frequently gets used in AQ. He has significant amount of absolute banger of matchups in Act 6. He's one of Variant 5 MVPs that came out now. He's one of Variant 1 MVPs. And he kind of represents, I believe, currently the best of Mystic class at the moment. So I'm going to put him there. And with this, that is my personal top 5 must-have champions in Marvel Contest of Champions, as close to you can be. But again, keep in mind that I personally do not think that there is a real 100% must-have. I don't think that missing out on any single champion will prevent anyone at its core level from completing a piece of content. I think acquiring more champions and having more options make every single piece of content easier. And I think that these are the champions that provide the biggest impact in the game on your ability to clear content effectively. But I don't think that not having a single one of these, any given one of these, is gonna hinder you to a point of, well, deal breaking you from kind of like completing a piece of content. But I am definitely very interested, what are your thoughts on the whole phrase must-have champion, or on the whole wording of must-have champion? And if it differs, please let me know in the comment section. In addition to that, if you would have to list top 5 champions you mark as must-haves, which ones would you personally list? But these have been mine. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button. We're currently trying to push for 31,000 subscribers, and as soon as we do, we're going to jump in Abyss of Legends. I launched merch store, check out in the description. We have Discord server, Facebook group, and a ton of other cool stuff happening. So stay notified, check out the description, follow channel further via the links provided, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information